What is up, guys? In today's video, we're going to be talking about the exotic hyperburst pistol and how this is one of the most overpowered items in the game right now. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like some more, comment down below what you think of this hyperburst pistol, and if you guys would like to use my code in the shop when getting anything, it is EvolveJake, just like my channel name is, and it is underneath the webcam at all times. So with the most recent update, the exotic hyperburst pistol was added to the list of exotics you can get from the rivalry stations, along with the explosive DMR and the red eye exotic AR, which is also explosive. And it seems like these exotics have completely replaced the previous set of exotics. I haven't seen the marking sniper, the shockwave RPG, or the exotic mammoth pistol since the start, or since like before the April Fool's update. So initially I thought they would just kind of like add exotics, but it seems like they're swapping them completely. And what that means is that your chances of finding this are really high because there's only, you know, a few different exotic weapons in the pool. It's not like they're just adding and adding, and it's getting like harder to find what you actually want. So not only is this hyperburst really good, but you're going to have a really easy time getting it. It only costs 80 rivalry credits. And as I said, the availability of in the computers is actually quite common. So what this exotic does is it has a shockwave effect on the first and final burst of the magazine, which makes it not only a really solid weapon, but also a mobility item. And it does that in the same slot, which is insanely valuable. In Fortnite, we only have 5 item slots. So being able to like extract as much value as you can out of that one single slot is really good. And not only is this versatile in the sense as like you could use it as your ranged weapon, but you could also use it as a mobility item, but also what you choose to do with that mobility aspect of it is also super versatile. So like you could use this on yourself as mobility, just as you would shockwaves. You just look behind yourself and shoot, maybe jump as you do it. You could look at the ground to just go straight up. It does seem like if you're sliding as you use it, then things can kind of bug out and get really choppy. But one thing you can do is kind of like, you know, look behind yourself, shoot, and then like this will give you forward momentum and boost your speed. And so you could land in a slide after that and then jump and kind of rinse and repeat that, where you shockwave yourself, jump, slide, and then jump again before you use the shockwave effect of the gun. Because as I said, if you're sliding when you do it, it's not that great. But if you're sliding to maintain your momentum and then jumping after the slide, it'll work fine. You just don't want to shockwave yourself when sliding. And it seems like this isn't like a guaranteed bug, but a lot of times if I'm sliding when I shoot myself with this, I end up getting that really buggy movement. So if you are someone who was having the buggy movement as well and you're like, wow, this thing sucks, it's just an unfortunate aspect of how you use it, which I'm not the greatest at because my brain really wants to slide as I shockwave myself with this for some reason. But either way, you could use it on movement on yourself really well. And if you get the timing for that down, it works. You also need to be reloading in between uses. I forgot to say that. So if you wanted to chain this, you need to reload while you're in the air, which isn't a hard thing to do because the reload speed on this is really good. It reloads really fast, so it's not really much of a problem. But you can also use this on enemies to kind of like knock them away from cover, out of bushes, maybe off a position of advantage like high ground. You can throw them into the storm in the end game, especially if they're like on a mountain or something. There's a lot of versatility with how you can use that. And just being flung around in general can be really disorienting for the enemy, even if it doesn't put them in a terrible situation. You know, if they're like out in the open and then you shockwave them, sure, they didn't, and then they're still out in the open. It's not like you really changed that much for them, but just being forced around, I think, is really overwhelming and disorienting to a lot of people. But it can also be disorienting for you sometimes if you are using the pistol. So that might be something that, makes you kind of go away from it if you aren't the best at adjusting to that. And you can also combine this with other forms of movement, like the overdrive grenades or the flowberry mist. You know, the low gravity effect you get from the flowberry mist will make the shockwave effect you get from this even more extreme. And then the overdrive grenades as well, after you use it, you kind of get a bit of like floatiness to your movement. And that will combo with the shockwave aspect of this pistol well, just like how most other mobility items are. And the shockwave effect of this also really griefs cars. For some reason, when you shockwave the car with this pistol, it kind of like stops in place. And since it shockwaves on your first shot, a lot of times your first time shooting a car, you'll really grief the momentum that car had and potentially throw that player off or make it easier for you to beam the car. As far as just being a weapon goes, this burst pistol is solid, but not like significantly better than the Thunderburst or the regular pistol, but I feel like it's up there. Its damage is a bit lower than the Thunderburst and the regular pistol at only 21 damage per shot and 42 per headshots, but its fire rate is also higher than both of those weapons at 9.16, while the Thunderburst has a 6.75 fire rate and the regular pistol is a 6.8. So it's weaker, but it shoots faster. There's a give and take there. DPS wise, this means that the burst pistol has a 192 DPS, which is higher than the purple Thunderburst or purple regular pistol, but lower than the gold versions of each of those items at 202 for the Thunderburst and 204 for the gold pistol. So while it is worse than the gold versions DPS wise, it's close enough to where it's not that big of a deal. And I don't really like DPS as like the end all be all stat that some players make it out to be. But the takeaway here should be that it keeps up with both of those weapons decently well, despite being a bit weaker just on damage. I think some people would look at the damage and just completely write this off, but it's solid. Also, the accuracy or the bloom on this is really good as well. You're going to be able to full spray it most of the time and not really think about, you know, controlling that. It obviously isn't as insane as the Thunderburst with a laser, because the Thunderburst is like perfectly accurate, but it's good enough to the point where, you know, accuracy is not going to be a problem or something that you really have to think about when using this weapon, which is nice because the Thunderburst is perfectly accurate. And so if the Thunderburst and this were like completely equal on like DPS, but the Thunderburst was significantly more accurate, then the burst is just going to be the better thing there. But it's accurate enough to where that's not the end all be all. One thing that is new with this weapon compared to how it was in chapter 6 is with chapter 7, we got the ability to aim in while you're in the air across the board for all weapons, but that's new to this weapon because last time it was in the game, you couldn't do that. And I feel like that actually benefits this a lot because in a lot of situations, you'll be like shockwaving yourself onto somebody if you want to push them. So you shockwave yourself with the pistol and then you could just turn and start beaming them while you're in the air. And as I said, the accuracy is really, really good. And so you're probably going to be able to consistently land shots while you're on the air traveling to somebody. And that's a huge improvement for using this weapon offensively than what we had in chapter 6, because in chapter 6, we couldn't, you know, aim down the sights while you're in the air. So that is nice. Another thing that you can do is kind of shockwave yourself up or overdrive your nade yourself up and then shoot down on somebody with the shockwave effect. And a lot of times if you're trying to overdrive onto somebody or shockwave onto somebody, your path is pretty predictable. And so it can be pretty easy for decent players to beam you. But the shockwave effect of this pistol knocking them around can throw them off and make what would have been maybe a sketchy push or a push that's risky where you get beamed, can make it a bit safer for yourself because you do throw that player off. And it's probably going to be easier for you to adjust to them, you know, moving on the ground than it is for them, their situation getting completely altered. So I think this weapon is really good. I think it's really versatile, and I think it's really difficult and weird to deal with because while it is somewhat common in the loot pool, it's not something you come up against every fight. And so you're forcing the opponent to respond to that shockwave effect. While you're the one initiating it, you're probably more used to playing around it because you're the one using the pistol. So I think it's really good. The weapon is solid. The mobility aspect is really good, especially if you get good at chaining it and, you know, not messing up with the slide. I think this exotic is pretty busted. And as I said earlier on the video, it's pretty easy to obtain because most of the rivalry stations are going to have it since the pool of exotics we currently have is pretty low. But that is going to be it for this video. Just wanted to let you know how busted this thing is. And if you've been struggling to play against it or wondering what it was that was throwing you around like that, it might have been this burst pistol. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, found it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.